Hi, I'm Scott Leadingham. Thanks for joining us here in the unique Northwest. It's said in the field of behavioral economics that when my neighbor loses their job, it's a recession, and when I lose my job, it's a depression, meaning that we tend not to be fully affected by the news around us until we ourselves are affected. And perhaps that's true with you during this COVID-19 pandemic. And we are going to talk with someone today who has been greatly affected by the pandemic. That is journalist Emily McCarty with Crosscut KCTS 9. Thanks for joining us today, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott.
So you have been reporting on the pandemic this year, as all journalists have in some capacity. You're based there in Central Washington in Yakima, but how have you personally been affected by the pandemic?
So it's been about 1 month and 1 week, but my mom went into urgent care. She was feeling unwell. They told her she had extremely low oxygen levels in her blood, and they said, get an ambulance right away, go to the emergency room. That was Sunday, and then by Thursday, she found out she had COVID right away, and then by Thursday, she had died. It was really, really quick. So I've definitely come to personally know the toll that COVID is taking on us as a country and the world.
And you wrote, of course, for your employer about that personal experience. I'm sure it was pretty painful. I read it and, sent it to my family just ahead of Thanksgiving, explaining, maybe we should really reconsider what we had already been doing to scale things back. But we ended up doing that, I guess, because of your reporting and your personal story. So I thank you for that. But I just want to say I really extend my sympathies to everything that you've gone through in the past month or so. And on that note, can you just tell us more about your mother and some of the memories that you have shared with her in the past? What kind of mother was she?
I mean, I love my mother. She's the best. But, I'm going to say the same thing. Hearing people talk about her via live stream at her memorial, I was listening in and it just listening to so many people whose lives she touched outside of, her closest friends and family who we already knew how we felt about her. But she was the quintessential mother. She raised myself and three other siblings. She homeschooled all of us at one point in our lives, taught us all to read and write and do math, and made breakfast for us and packed our sack lunches. And then when we got home, dinner was ready. And me and my brother and sisters did a bunch of sports. She was there at every event cheering us on. I'm sure it was very boring sometimes to watch kids poorly execute skills in sports in junior high, and elementary and high school. But she was there with my dad cheering for us. And when we were poor growing up, she decided to get a newspaper out for the Spokane Review, actually, in Spokane. And she would wake up from around 1 to 2 in the morning to around 3 or 4 and sleep split shifts for years and years, just to help the family out. She would go back to sleep and wake back up to help us kids all go to school. I mean, she was a giver and she was an incredible listener. When her pastor was speaking words about her at the memorial, he said, I rarely see someone who no one speaks poorly about, and Mary was one of those people. She was just a sweet, kind, loving person, and she was really, if you met her, you just felt right at home.
So you, of course, have been reporting on the pandemic throughout this year as it's affected people in Central and Eastern Washington. We'll note that, of course, Yakima, where you're based, was one of the hardest hit areas, not only in Washington, but on the West Coast by a per capita population basis. It was just really bad for a while. And now you have this personal connection to the news around you. I wonder if you've taken time to reflect on how you might view your job differently, or how you might approach stories differently now having this tragic personal connection to it.
I definitely took some time off after my mom died, of course, but I've just become more and more passionate about the work, especially when it comes to reporting on COVID. I report on Central and Eastern Washington, and a lot of those opinions are very different than, let's say, King County and Seattle, where it's very liberal and people are more likely to go along with Inslee's restrictions. I've written pieces on people who don't want to wear masks, who are protesting the shutdowns. don't believe in the science, let's say, behind wearing masks or how it's spread. And, I have to talk to these people, and I can, put my reporter hat on and listen and still write about these topics. It's hard, but I think it's just so important to understand why America is like the worst country in the world when it comes to deaths. Why is it that way? We haven't had federal leadership put together, across the country protocols like Inslee has here in the state. We're lucky that we have a mandate to wear masks here. But I think it's really important that we understand where people are coming from, people who don't think like us. Why do people not want to wear masks? Why do they not believe the science behind it? What are the reasons behind why we have so many deaths and such a high rate in our country and in our state? I'm able to kind of separate those opinions from what I know. In my essay I wrote, don't get together for the holidays. It's so important not to do that. Wear your mask. Don't gather indoors with people outside of your household. But I'm still really passionate about reporting on it, and not just people who share my same views, but really talking to people who think and feel differently than me. And I think that's part of the great part about being a journalist, especially out here in more rural areas. Is you just get all the differing opinions. And to me as a journalist, I'm inherently curious and love talking to people and hearing different points of view. So it's hard, but also like that journalist part in me comes out where I still really am passionate and engaged about what I get to report on.
Most people during this year have still probably not been inside of a hospital, and that's probably a good thing for them. And I know things are very different on the outside. Our whole world has changed in some way, but I still think that probably most people don't really have a true appreciation for what is really being done inside hospitals and the frontline health workers who are confronting the pandemic. And it strikes me as sort of interesting, that contrast. Yes, there's businesses closed down. Yes, there's some very economic hardships that bars and restaurants in particular and other businesses are facing. But for example, your mother was in Sacred Heart Hospital in Spokane, that you mentioned that in your writing. And I actually live pretty close to there, and I can see people coming and going all the time, as I always have. And maybe the only difference this year is that they're all wearing masks as opposed to previous years. But then on the inside, I'm sure it's very different. And I'll contrast that with the fact that there are two bars right across from Sacred Heart Hospital that, of course, have been dealing with the shutdowns and the various measures this year, but they still have two big tents outside, and people are coming and going every day to eat and drink outside and gather late at night to be together in those plastic shelters now. And they're doing everything that they're allowed to do by state law, but it still just seems very striking how different that is compared to the hospital. Have you, taken time to reflect on some of that contrast?
Definitely. I think if more people saw what was going on inside ICUs, it would shock them. It would put a stop to all their plans. They would stop going for beers with their friends with their masks off. They would stop, swinging by their grandparents' house to say hi. When we knew the day that my mother was going to die. So my dad and my three siblings and I were allowed to visit her. We were very fortunate. Normally it's 2 visitors only. An exception was made, and they allowed us to rotate through so that only 2 people were in the room at a time. So my dad and each of my siblings and I got to say goodbye to my mom. Just to start with, there's no waiting room anymore. We had to stand outside. We were crying. It was freezing outside. Because they shut down the waiting room. So there's not even anywhere to comfortably wait. Once we were allowed inside to start filing upstairs to the ICU to see my mom, we just kind of had to stand against the wall and cry. I mean, it's just horrible from the moment you get in there. There's no privacy. There's nowhere to go. I mean, they shut down the waiting room to prevent people from spreading COVID. It's a good reason, but it was so hard. One by one, they called us upstairs. My dad stayed in the whole time, and when it was my turn, when my brother came back from his turn, he fell to the floor of the hospital and was just sobbing. I've never seen my brother cry before. And he was just down on his hands and knees. He just broke down saying goodbye to my mom. Up in the ICU, she is in an all glass room. So I was waiting for my sister to come out so I could go in and I could see my mom in there. I had to wear full PPE, gown, gloves, N95, goggles. And I was just shaking so hard. If you've worn an N95, it's got these rubbery straps, and it's really hard to put on when you're shaking. The nurses and the ICU staff basically dressed me in my gown and my goggles and my N95. Most wonderful ICU staff ever. And I went in, and I mean, it's horrible looking. She had dialysis through her neck to try and get her oxygen levels up. She already had a port in her chest. She had tubes coming out of everywhere, IVs coming out of everywhere. Before we saw her, she was on a non-rebreather mask, which covers all of your face except for your eyes. So she can't really talk through it. We were fortunate that they took that off and couldn't get enough oxygen through her nostrils through just a little breathing tube so we could actually talk to her. I mean, she was weak, she was small, she was nauseous, she was tired, she was hard for her to breathe. I mean, it was horrible. It's horrible. I asked my mom if I could take a picture with her for one last photo, and she said yes. And she kind of giggled, don't put it on Facebook. And so I don't share it. If I could have, it's a very powerful, striking photo because it's terrifying what she looked like. And if you could imagine your mom or your grandma, your cousin, or whoever looking like that, I think you'd say, okay, I don't think I need to go to one Thanksgiving this year. I think I can skip it. And we talked for maybe 15 minutes, and I told her how much she meant to me, and I held her hand the whole time, and I was crying, profusely. I had to lift up my goggles because it was just completely fogged over, and said goodbye and walked out. And that was the last time I saw my mom. My dad and my other sister were the last ones in the room with her when they finally gave her the morphine anti-anxiety, put her to sleep so she wouldn't suffer. But ultimately she suffocated to death. That was how she died, from the oxygen. She felt no pain. They take good care of her. But if you want to think about gathering, think about your loved ones suffocating. That's how my mom died.
Wow. Of course, the hospitals aren't just different, but as you were alluding to, sort of the process of mourning is different. Gatherings are different. And we are now being told, of course, the one thing that we might need most during the process of mourning, close contact with friends and family and others, is something that we should avoid. How has that felt for you?
I've never felt grief like this before, so I don't know how to compare it to normal times. I talk a lot with friends via the phone or video chat. I live with my partner, so I'm lucky that I'm not completely alone. We're already in a bubble together, so I have my partner to talk to. I've gone to a seminar on grief, losing someone during COVID during these times, and nothing really helps. I think it's just, like they say, it's a time game. You just kind of have to wait it out. Not seeing, at the memorial, I watched it via live stream. And it was great to memorialize my mother in that way. And I'm glad that I at least got to watch something on live stream. But I mean, it's difficult. I don't go visit my family in Spokane. The last time I saw them, we all wore masks around each other for when my mom died. And, I don't know. I don't know how one grieves during this time. I think it's really important to reach out on phone calls or video chat or whatever you're comfortable with. But in some ways, it's good for introspection and time to think about things and be by yourself. But at the same time, it just feels, it's very solitary. It's very alone. And I really feel for the hundreds of thousands of families here in the US alone that are grieving. We just reached the 300,000 mark the other day of deaths in the US. And I just can't even imagine what the country's going through, and it's going to get worse here. We've come upon the third wave, and we've already started it in terms of deaths and cases, and it's upon us. This is going to be a really rough winter.
I certainly wouldn't tell people what they should or should not do with their own families, but you've written about that, what you would advise based on your experience. And health officials and elected leaders have been saying it since before Thanksgiving to rethink your plans. But what do you want people to take away from hearing about your experience?
I mean, I will absolutely tell people, do not gather, do not get together, do not hang out indoors with your masks off. If you're getting together, you're going to be eating and drinking. You're going to take your masks off. I mean, there was that study, I think it was out of Korea, that showed there's transmission that was like 12 and 15 feet away just by being within 5 minutes. You know, that 6-foot rule doesn't apply anymore. If you're inside with your mask off, don't even do it. You know, I wrote on Twitter, just, how do you shock people into doing this? I was just blunt. I said, you might as well bring a shotgun to Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday, whatever you celebrate. You're basically shooting people with invisible little bullets. I mean, you're giving them the worst gift you could possibly give someone for whatever holiday you're celebrating coming up. You can skip 1 year. 1 year. That's all you have to skip. The vaccine is going to be coming, you know, within the next 6 to 9 months for most Americans. We can slowly reduce wearing of masks. You know, all you have to do is wait 1 year and you can actually see your family. I don't get to see my mom this Christmas. I didn't get to see her at Thanksgiving. She died before then. You know, I'm not going to see her at my birthday, any other, you know, next year. And you can prevent your mom dying, your family member dying like mine died, by just not gathering. It's so simple. You know, I've had people on Twitter who are naysayers compare it to cancer and, oh, mine died for, you know, that's sad. It's not cancer. We can't prevent cancer by wearing a mask. You can prevent COVID by wearing a mask, by following the rules. You can actually save a life by not doing it. The sad thing is, not only can your family get contaminated that you gather with, you can kill people you don't even know. You go to your book club, you go to the grocery store, you go any of these other places after you've infected your family at the holidays, and you're killing people and you may not even know it. I mean, it's so frustrating to me. It was frustrating to me before knowing the science as a journalist, and after my mom died now, it's just so painful that it's so simple to wear a mask. It's the easiest possible solution. There's not a shortage of masks anymore. They're not hard to get. You can buy one, you can get them from your local health department, they hand them out. People just still aren't doing it. And I hope that the story of my mom, and I hope it shocks them. I hope they hear how she died and how horrible it was and how it's impacting me and my family. And they think, yeah, maybe I don't want that to happen to my family member. I can maybe skip one Christmas. I hope that's what people get out of this.
Emily, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story. And please, again, take my sincere condolences on what I imagine is going to be a very challenging season for you and your family. Thank you for joining us, Emily.
Thank you so much, Scott.
You can read Emily McCarty's essay about her mother and her family's experience with COVID at crosscut.com. And for more Northwest news, come to our website, nwpb.org. Thank you for joining us here in the unique Northwest.